Hello humans, Artist with a Fro here, and welcome back to the show. I figured I'd make this video while also having one of the projects that I have coming up towards the end of the month of July, but also kind of as a celebratory video for reaching 400 subscribers. We had recently reached 400 at the start of June, and I decided to kind of come up with this video closer towards the end of it to see if we could hopefully potentially be a little bit closer to 500. I believe we're currently sitting on maybe 404 or 405 subscribers at the moment, but that's kind of besides the point. Here I have a list of questions that I've asked some of my viewers, some of my subscribers, and all around people on my channel to give me. Some of these questions have come from the Discord, some of them have been from the comments section in some of the other videos, and some have been on Twitter as well. Now, without further ado, let's just jump right into the questions. So the first question is, what made me come up with the channel name? Now that's an interesting one. In regards to when I made the channel, I actually did currently have an afro. If you've watched some of my previous videos, and the one that's probably playing right now, you can clearly tell that I don't have an afro hairstyle at the moment. And it was one of those things where it was just like, well, I guess it kind of like fit the mold of where I was. I was in either college and or high school at the time. I believe I was in college. And I, again, was studying for visual arts and fine arts in 3D animation and computer graphics. As well as having a few other sort of like minors, but it was mainly an art degree that I had come out of after my 4 years of college. And I was just like, well, I'm an artist and I have an afro, and I was just like, you know what? Let me try to see if I can make these two features work. I've had multiple people joke to me about like, oh, are those the only two qualities that you have, and is that why you made your name that? And I think it was really just because it kind of rhymed. I think if I'm being honest, that's the only reason why it really happened. I have this tendency to make a lot of rhyming names, rhyming things. And I think that's that's just my style when it comes to whether I'm advertising something or creating something. So Artist with a Fro is a one in many names that I've had alongside the Coolest Duelist and Dumb Thumb. So if you've seen me on whether it be Dueling Book or Dueling Nexus, YDO Pro, Overwatch, other games, either under the Coolest Duelist or under the Dumb Thumb tag name, then that is most definitely me. So to go into why I made Ancient Warriors, it's kind of interesting, right? If you go back to the first or the second video of the Unsealed Only journey, or if you watch the first episode of the Sealed Only journey, or if you watch the video where I talk about why I give away free cards, I probably mentioned it in one of those three. But I'll say it here again. Now, when I was growing up, one of the first video games that I remember playing on PlayStation 2 was Dynasty Warriors 3. And from there, that was kind of one of the franchises that I've consistently bought games for, aside from maybe Pokemon and Metal Gear Solid. So having a adoration for Ancient Warriors really comes from that history that I have with the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the fictionalized or sort of romanticized versions of them in the video game series by Koei and Tecmo, the Dynasty Warriors series. I've always been a big fan of the hack and slash games, having multiple sort of like fun characters as Ling Tong, Guan Yu, so on and so forth. And it was one of those things where I saw that they were actually doing this, and I was more intrigued on kind of the decision that they decide to go with. And what I'm kind of talking about is basically in the actual series, the characters, or rather the three factoring warring states, are Shu Han, Wei, and Wu, and they are categorized by their three different colors. Now, interestingly enough, it looks like Konami decided to rearrange both the Wu and the Wei groups by making the Wei groups fire and the Wu groups water. And I kind of understand why, because Wu was technically closer towards the harbor than the Wei states, but it just really didn't make any sense in my mind. I feel like some of the Wei characters should have been water attributes, and so on and so forth, but I'm kind of like going down a deeper rabbit hole. But basically, to answer that question, I got into Ancient Warriors because I was a big fan, and still am a big fan, of Dynasty Warriors, save for Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9. How did I get into Yu-Gi-Oh in the first place? Now, that's an interesting question. I feel like most people around my age, around the sort of like mid-20s range, got into Yu-Gi-Oh off of the anime. And I am very much a proponent of that as well. I don't even remember if I've seen the first episode. I know it wasn't at my house where I watched the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I remember sitting down and I was just so intrigued by the show. And then the cards came out, and I remember getting the starter deck Yugi, and my brother had gotten starter deck Kaiba, and I was just like so happy when I had first opened up the packs on Christmas Day, or rather the starter deck on Christmas Day, and it was kind of like a wrap ever since. It's like I've been interested in Yu-Gi-Oh! The artwork, of course, has evolved over time, and the playstyle has evolved over time as well. I actually did quit after Zexal. I never got into pendulums, and that kind of like turned me off all the way up until possibly the end of Reigns did I really get into Links. And it was really like there is another reason as to why I sort of jumped back into the Yu-Gi-Oh scene, and we'll probably have another Q&A for that, but I'm probably gonna have to get the other person that got me back into Yu-Gi-Oh to also be a co-host for that video. Now, it's interesting. I think that these type of questions are very culturally based in regards to being a non-conformist, right? It's like you're supposed to hate pineapple on pizza. You're supposed to get the joke with pizza in the bone. I personally like pineapple on pizza. It's not something that I would eat regularly, but I think that it kind of goes into that, like, the meme of, yes, you want to be the person that's against the thing that people seem popular. It's like hating pineapple on pizza is very much a fad. And I think that if you are mature enough to try pineapple on pizza, then you will be pleasantly surprised, or not, depending on your taste. So this is kind of interesting, right? Because my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh deck has kind of changed over time. I think that as you grow in the game, you have varied amounts of favorite decks. I can name some of the decks that I've enjoyed playing in the past, such as plants, ninjas, so on and so forth. If I were to say my favorite deck, I think it comes down to probably 3 aspects, right? The price, of course, the artwork, which would then be the second thing, and then, of course, the play style of the cards themselves. And the only 2 decks that I would consider my favorite there are the 6 Samurais and the Ice Barriers. I've been a fan of both decks, primarily because the artwork of them is, in my opinion, some of the best artwork I've seen. I would put the Ancient Warriors up there, and they would probably be up there as a close third. But the original 6 Samurai were really, really interesting to me, and one of my favorite cards still to this day is 6 Samurai Iroh. And it's one of those things where it's just the stylization of it, maybe of course stemming from that history of being a fan of the Dynasty Warriors series and the Samurai Warrior series, and just like being a big fan of like all things Japanese. It was kind of a big rush to me. I was just like, what? There are samurais, there's 6 of them, they have to work as a group, there are different like tools that they use. It was just very, very cool to see how that deck kind of played out and how the different teamworks and stories were made around them. When it came to the Ice Barriers, of course, it was the first full-fledged water deck that I built, and I really hope that they do win the OCG voting for a structure deck. I would have never expected that Ice Barriers in the year 2020 would be coming back. But it probably was, again, the teamwork aspect of it in regards to the playstyle and how you needed more than one ice barrier. And you guys can kind of see how this kind of trends into the pattern with the Ancient Warriors as well. I'm very much a person that likes to play decks that have a aesthetic of teamwork based around them. I think that everybody is here for a reason. Now, I think that a lot of people don't acknowledge that, and I think it comes down to whether or not they have had the nurture or the care or the sort of environment that is able to encourage and increase and inspire them to do the thing that they do. I personally have my own things that I want to do. There are a lot of projects, both creating video games, comics, animations, art style, deciding things, etc. that I want to do. And I think that it kind of starts here. I think that with the YouTube channel, I've been able to experiment with different videos and just make things that matter to me. And I think that that's kind of the biggest thing at the end of the day. I think one of the biggest fallacies that we have is when we see people that have big success, we don't necessarily take into account the amount of time and effort that they've put into it. And we also kind of get discouraged because we feel as if we're never going to reach that point if we're starting off and getting, 10 views here, 20 views here, an inner circle, so on and so forth. There does come a point where you have to then kind of make as much of this matter as the time that you have, because of course time is of the essence. But I think the biggest factor, of course, aside from the time, is your overall enjoyment of said thing. If you really enjoy doing what makes you happy, or if you really enjoy doing this thing, then no amount of money, no amount of recognition, no amount of any outer influences will matter at that point, because you are able to encourage yourself to do the very best of it at the end of the day. Of course, there comes the aspect of learning how to do it better. But again, it's really just a matter of you honing your own skills and you being proud of your own products. So just as I'm proud of the Artist with the Fro channel and proud of where it's going to be going, I really can't wait to see, what's the next video that I'm going to make, or what's the next concept that I'm going to be talking about. When it comes to my favorite archetype, it is definitely not dragons. I think Konami has a very, very big reach for certain archetypes, and I think that flows into a lot of where their decision making comes in regards to making certain decks. Maybe I should make a video on why they decide to give dragons, zombies, spellcasters, and warriors a lot of assistance, and other decks such as Pyro and Aquas not so much. But if it were to come to my favorite archetype, I would probably say, and I know I'm kind of backpedaling here, but I'd probably say warriors. And again, I think that goes back to the ancient warriors, the 6 samurais, in regards to their playability. I think that they have a lot of really cool cards. I've been a really big fan of the Noble Knight cards as well, and not only their artwork, but the text that some of their normal monsters have. Of course, you do have these 6 samurais. Marauding Captain is another card that comes to mind, Command Knight, so on and so forth, the Gearfried archetype, etc. My second favorite would probably be something along the lines of the Spellcaster archetype, maybe, or possibly the Beast Warriors, with, of course, the Fire Fist and the Ancient Warriors. My favorite character out of all of the Yu-Gi-Oh series is probably going to be Bastion. I think when I grew up watching GX, it was always interesting to me to see somebody that had multiple decks and kind of have a playstyle built for every situation. It really brought kind of the realism to what I think a lot of people had when they had certain decks. Of course, you have people that are loyalists that will play styles and decks kind of, again, to the end of the earth, but that really just depends on, again, how much Konami is able to support it. If you're a hero player, you don't necessarily have to worry about ever having a time where heroes aren't going to get support. But if you're someone, I don't know, I always put this aspect of Bastion being that type of person where he would prepare a deck and have a multitude of decks based on current situations or based on the current metagame, so that way he could sort of like switch in and out. I think that as you decide to delve deeper into Yu-Gi-Oh, you tend to have more than one deck that you are comfortable playing. I currently have about 6 decks, and it's probably going to have to be 7 if I do decide to make the ice barriers again. But in a total of 6 decks that I have, it's always one of those things where it's just like, I can either play them interchangeably, or I can give them to some of my friends and we can like duel against each other, and so on and so forth. It just makes the experience a lot more fun overall. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up. I know this was a much longer video than most people were kind of expecting, and I just want to again say thank you guys for 400 plus subscribers. We have a lot more, of course, content on the way, but some of the other content is still going to continue to happen. Dojo duels, streams, so on and so forth. So if you've enjoyed some of the stuff so far, again, just please continue to show your support. Make sure that you're liking, commenting, and reaching out on all of the videos and other points of social media. If you are new to the channel, make sure that you give this video a subscribe, or rather make sure you give the channel a subscribe, as well as ringing the notification bell so that way you can stay up to date on all things Artist with a Fro. Stay tuned for more content coming soon. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. And with that being said, I've been the Artist with a Fro. That, my friends, is the show, and thank you all for watching.